Hello, everybody. It's Matthew Brand, author of Magnum Creed, and today we're going to talk about our favorite presidential candidate, Joe Biden. I'm going to name 7 problems with Joe Biden. Why 7? Well, because I like a little challenge, but not too much. But there's a lot of problems with the guy, and there's a lot of problems with Trump, too. Don't get me wrong. But the problems with Biden are a little glaring, and it's a little kind of odd how people are trying to excuse every little thing going on. Right? I see some things, but others, nah. I don't want to go there, but let's put it in number one. This is my number one problem with Biden. It might surprise you, right? It might surprise you that this is number one. And it's he condemns anybody who disagrees with him. And I hate that. I hate that in a candidate. I hate that in any type of politician. I hate people like that in general. Hate is a strong word, but I highly dislike them, and I just don't really respect them. If your form of an argument is insulting someone, you've already lost the argument, in my opinion. I think that's the number one way to see that you've lost an argument. If your best comeback is calling someone a fat, that's a horrible, that you don't really have a leg to stand on. If telling somebody they're a lion dog faced pony soldier or whatever the case may be, that is not that is not a strong argument. That is weird. And I'm black. Look, the whole point of Biden was to get the black vote. He didn't get it from me. I'm not a conservative, but you got to understand, these are huge problems when this is your number one presidential candidate and he can't have a decent discourse. As much as absolutely dislike Mike. What's that guy's name? Mike, not Michael Bloomberg, right? As much as I absolutely dislike Michael Bloomberg, at least he has the intelligence to lie. at least he can make a comeback instead of berating people every time someone asks him a question. He answers it civilly. I would never vote for Michael Bloomberg. Not with a knife to my throat. I would not vote for Michael Bloomberg. But he answers it civilly, and it got a lot more respect than Biden, insulting people every single time someone asks him a question. That either disagrees with him or questions his actions, or challenges something he said. That's terrible to have in a president, because it shows a dictator. Later on, even whether it's a president, a legislator, or anything, because that means they don't even listen to. Because these aren't opponents he's talking to; these are people who were potential voters for him that he treats like that. Anybody he treats like that. So no, that's my number one problem with him. Number two is you can't really advertise him well without insulting Trump. And that's a lot of candidates, but with him, it's especially so. Really, when you talk about the best things people like about a candidate, there are usually some shining stars. Now, when you talk about Biden, so, okay, what is the thing you like most about Biden? Well, he was Obama's vice president. Okay, we know that. And he's not Trump. I haven't heard too many people speak up for Biden in a way that's like, oh man, this is why he would be such a great president. Really, all I've heard is he's not Trump. It would get Trump out of office. That's all I ever hear. That's really only people that would mean that that's the only reason people will vote for him, is to get Trump out of office. They're not interested in anything else he's saying. And a lot of people are also bothered by number 3 reason. So the number 3 reason is the sexual allegations, right? When we first started, I was just like, oh, whatever, he's, sniffing hair. That's politics, right? I used to write for different people, and I was like a ghostwriter. Not that I was good at it, but they take what I say, edit it to be more presentable, or change the words, and then what they do with it later is their business. However, a lot of times you get kind of asked to say a little something about this person or that person, right? Like John Kerry looks French, or George W. Bush is dumb as brick, just dumb stuff like that, right? But with these sexual allegations, that's kind of how I felt about it. Okay, they're just, making fun of the fact, but they were even honest about the fact. It was like, okay, but, did he really do it? It's a kind of a stretch, right? Okay, he sniffs hair. He's just probably kind of old and kind of weird, a little creepy, that's all, just creepy Uncle Joe, or whatever you call it. But no, now that the allegations have gotten worse, even when a woman came out, you're still like, okay, that's a long time ago. And a lot of the opponents were completely, when it happened to their people, they gave the benefit of the doubt. So a lot of people were giving him, a bit of benefit of the doubt. But this is getting worse and worse. And for someone who said always believe women, you should. He's a hypocrite. It's not really the sexual allegations that people are so upset about. It's the fact that he's being a hypocrite about it. He was so for it when it was somebody else, but now that it's his spot in the hot seat, he's dodging everything, and that's not right. You could stand, but he's dodging everything, and I think that's one of the worst things that could have come out of this. So first, he's condescending to anybody who dissents from one of his opinions or who challenges him. Two, you can't advertise him well without really talking about how he's not Trump, right? That's his best shining thing about him, is that he's not Trump. Three, you got these sexual allegations pending, and he's kind of a hypocrite about it. So number four, people don't want Obamacare back. that's his magnum opus of a law. That's what he really wants to pass. He wants he's saying, okay, I'll get you Obamacare, I'll get you free healthcare, but a lot of people didn't like it because what happened was it was touted as free healthcare. People didn't get free healthcare. What they got was a mandatory healthcare. So whether they had to buy healthcare, whether they could afford it or not. So this time it'll come back, or it'll just be taken out of your taxes permanently. So then you're like, okay, I'm not buying healthcare, so you got penalized at the end of the year. They said it wasn't really a penalty, but it is. If you didn't have healthcare, you basically got hurt for that, and that's wrong. And then because a lot of reasons people didn't have it is because they can't afford it. Right, that was the reason they didn't have it, because they couldn't afford it. Didn't make healthcare more affordable. They called it the Affordable Health Care Act, but it wasn't affordable. They just made it tried to make it more affordable for the government, not for the regular person. It started off cheap, and then it went up and up and up and up until people just simply, it wasn't doing anybody any favors. So people aren't interested in having Obamacare back. They wanted it gone, and that was one of the things they were happy Trump did. Now, I'm not saying we can't have a healthcare alternative, but the one he's advertising, people don't want. Number 5 is, speaking of what healthcare people might want, he did terrible in the debates. That was one of the big thing that a lot of people were pushing in the debates, is free healthcare for everybody, and helping out immigrants who are coming across the border without documentation. However you want to call it. Some people say illegal immigrants, some people say undocumented immigrants, but that's the people they're talking about. Usually people south of the border, not north of the border. They're not really thinking about Canadians for whatever reason. They're thinking about, Hispanic people south of the border. Generally, sometimes they're thinking about like maybe some Asian people who came from like a third world country or something like that, but mostly they're thinking about Hispanic people south of the border who came over without documentation, getting some help for them so they don't have to get deported back over without some type of assistance or a better gateway to citizenships or something, right? That being said, that's the sentiment of people who are running for the Democratic ticket, or whatever you want to call it. So that being said, he did terrible in the debates. He did absolutely horrible in the debates, and he got roasted because if those are the two things that people complain about, he was really one of the people who made it so that the things that the people were mad about Trump with the how they said that was what they were calling it, children in cages, the detention centers and all that. That was him. He did that. Him and Obama did that. And so when people looked into it, it was easy to call him out on it on a debate stage. And he couldn't defend. He never really got to defend himself on anything. He was mumbling all over the place. He did terrible. And he's just showing signs of old age, which brings me to number 6, which is his vice president will likely be the president. And that's kind of because it feels like a cheap shot. It's like, okay, we really want this person to become president, but we're going to use Joe Biden because he's really the only person that anybody likes anymore from our party. Really, like, because everybody else from the party is like a young upstart, right? They're popular with a lot of the younger people, like Andrew Yang is popular with younger people. You have um, what was that? Elizabeth Warren is popular with a lot of younger people because they want to see a woman president, right? Andrew Yang. It's not that I don't think they really want to see an Asian president necessarily. Like they don't. I don't think they care. I think most people don't care what race the president is. But some people might like a black president. But really, I feel like they either want a woman president or they want somebody who's cool and relatable. And Andrew Yang seemed cool and relatable. I don't care much for his policies, but people did seem to like him. They like Bernie Sanders because he seemed like revolutionary, right? He was going to do a lot of if people were more communistic or socialistic, they like Bernie Sanders' policies. So that being said, Joe Biden isn't bringing anything new to the table. So by making him the head runner, whoever's his vice president is probably going to become the president at some point in time. And it feels like a cheap shot because a lot of people are like, if they weren't actually going to vote for, him, or they were going to vote for, let's say they were going to vote for Bernie Sanders. If Bernie Sanders is VP, they're going to vote for Biden to get Bernie Sanders in, right? And they do stuff like that. They'll bring a woman in. It's like, oh, you want a woman president? Vote for Joe Biden. When we know people probably weren't going to vote, so it's kind of like that cheap switcheroo, and people are onto that, so they're not that excited to vote for Joe Biden for that reason. Some people are very excited to vote for him for that reason, but once again, it's kind of that weird old switcheroo, right? I think that would be his best bet is to actually make Warren or what's his name, the Bernie Sanders his vice president. That would be the most intelligent move he could probably make. But I don't know if they're going to do that. I know he'll probably do a woman, but you never know. You never know. Number 7. And this is obvious. This is probably the most obvious one, and probably the one you figured it out by now, since you haven't heard it by now. He sounds like he has dementia when he's talking. He does not sound all there right in the head, right? I already said that he did terrible. He was like that in the debates, but I mean, just all in general. No matter what he's talking about, he always says the wrong thing. He's completely just lost. And then there, people who are obsessively like left wing, people who are ideologues who are going to vote Democratic no matter what. They'll make I've heard excuses for them, right? They're saying it's a speech impediment. Right there, this is a speech impediment. You're like, that's a speech impediment, right? You're stumbling around trying to come up with the right words. You're not really eloquent in your speaking. Obama, he was a great speaker. He had a bit of a, George W. Bush. He had that too. This is not that. Some people do have a little trip over their words a little bit. This is not that. That man is getting old. He doesn't know what he's talking about half the time. He can't hold a good argument or a debate or a discussion with somebody. I mean, look at him in the allegation. With the sexual allegations, they just had an interview with him. Like, if you look at the interview, he couldn't handle himself well. There's a difference between stumbling over your words and not being able to just answer questions coherently, even if the point is to dodge them, right? He's not dodging them eloquently. He's just like a deer in headlights. So that's not good for a president. So that's 7 problems with Joe Biden. I know a lot of people are, they just want Trump out of office, so they're willing to vote for just about anybody. This isn't really for them, but this is just kind of to bring to light what a lot of people are thinking, but they're having trouble themselves, saying out. Like, there's so much wrong with this dude, but this is the Democrats' number one guy right now, right? This is who they put up, because this is not what people wanted. People wanted Andrew Yang. People wanted I didn't want them, but I'm just saying, people wanted Andrew Yang. People wanted Bernie Sanders. People wanted Elizabeth Warren. They, in that order. Joe Biden is getting up there by default because there's just so many people who are going to vote Democratic one way or another. They're like, well, he's not them. If that makes any sense, he's not them. We don't want all that leftist communist stuff. Joe Biden seems a little bit more middle, right? So they're just voting for the guy who's default not the worst, or not his policies are not these things they don't want, right? So they're not voting for Joe Biden. They're voting for not Sanders, if that makes any sense. There are a lot of people who are passionate about Sanders. People didn't vote Biden in passionately. They voted him in because they were dispassionate about Sanders. They were unhappy about Sanders. They were trying to avoid getting Bernie Sanders in. Some people, you'll be like, well, why didn't they vote in Elizabeth Warren? Once again, a lot of people feel like some of the things she wanted were a little extreme. They didn't really trust some of the stuff she said. She did used to be Republican, so, or conservative, whatever you want to call it. So just keep these things in mind. Anyway, that's Matthew Brand. If you haven't checked out the book Magnum Creed, check it out. It's a good book for people who are looking into getting guns or first time gun owners. I'm look. It's not expensive. It's not the best book in the world, but it's a nice little book to get. It's you can get a physical copy or a download copy, whatever you like. It's on Amazon. Check it out. It's on Kindle. And if you want, please put a like, a subscribe, add a comment. It really helps out. Helps me do this more, when it looks like I'm getting some traction. So that being said, thanks for tuning in if you stayed this far, and peace.